Hello everyone. This is Deji from the Diary of an African Entrepreneur. I'm here today with Tayo Osiyemi, a man who wears many hats, and we're going to explore many of those hats today. Tayo, thank you very much for joining us on the podcast today.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me, Deji. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah. So I'm going to say this, as a matter of fact, if there's when I think about the concept of somebody who embodies leadership, who has been able to balance that with family, with faith, with business, and seems to be doing it all very well, not phased. Not many people come to mind, and I'm saying this, and this is me knowing that I've been amongst many people who are successful in their own right as a business leader. But one of the names that comes up on my radar is Tayo Osiyemi, is you. And it would be good to really get into your mind to understand what the driver, what the source of what you do today, of the passion, what that driver is. So can you tell us a little bit about yourself? Who is Tayo? Who is Tayo? Let us meet you.
All right. That's a very soul-searching question. As you know, when they say, "Who are you?" For me, I would, define myself as someone who's passionate about life. And why I say that is because, it's a privilege to be here. It's a privilege to be here at this time and space, to be able to interact with the people that we interact with every day, to be able to sort of leave our own imprint, you know, on the sand of time, as it were. So I consider myself to be someone who's passionate about life. And the concept of life for me is about people. I tell a lot of people that, I'm a faith-based person. And so I would say that God's primary focus, when it comes to the entire cosmos, is human beings. At the center of all of the complexity of creation is the human being. And so, if that's God's primary business, then for me, that's also literally my greatest pull. How do we in some way impact on humanity in a significant way. So I count myself privileged because I come from a pretty humble background in terms of, growing up. I grew up in Kano, was born in the city of Kano, spent my first 16 years there in school, interact with a lot of people from what you might call a different tribe, was in the middle of what you might call cosmopolitan Kano at the time, where you had multiple tribes, of course, the Northerners, the Hausas, in terms of the Nigerian context, you had Igbos and then you had the Yorubas and all of that. So it was a privilege to see people, you know, from different, backgrounds interact. And then growing up in that kind of environment, you basically saw the value of relationships for what they are, devoid of the sentiments of tribe and all of that. So that was the context in which I grew up. You also saw a significant social disparity, as you would imagine. You saw young children who literally could have been you roaming around the streets with no covering, no parent, no source of livelihood. You saw that. You saw indigent, individuals. You saw abject poverty, but you also saw a lot of affluence. And so when you look at that, a part of you wants to first of all figure out what is my position and what's my place in this, whole conversation, and how do I impact society. So as soon as I got an opportunity to leave Kano, I moved down south, eventually went to Abafamaolo University, we connected at some point there. And the reality is that that journey has always been about how do I impact the most number of people? How do I contribute? And so that has literally, guided the choices that I've made. As early as campus days, I had the opportunity to lead, had the opportunity to impact people in different ways from, student associations to even, the department. You had one-on-one interactions with people that made you contribute significantly. And that has sort of dotted my entire journey, even into professional career. So that's who I am, someone who loves life and who wants to see how we can make the greatest impact on humanity. That's me.
Yeah, many people that might not know you as well. I've known you since our days in Lagos State Polytechnic, and I used to remember you,
Yeah,
your afro hair then.
telling you.
you know,
Yeah.
and you used to sing a lot in the choir then, and
Yes, true.
For me, I think there was a dramatic shift in your personality from Lagos State Polytechnic to OAU, and I wanted to talk a little bit about that. Did something happen between those two poles?
That's a very good point. It's people that know you at that level that can perhaps, draw a map and say this is who you were and this is how you. So I think it was just the evolution of Tayo Osiyemi, to be honest. And I'll take it back a little before last Potech. Before Lagos State Polytechnic, of course, like I said, I grew up in the city of Kano, so I was, in a pretty affluent school where you had a lot of, you know, people from very affluent backgrounds. So you were the poor kid in a rich man's school. So I had a lot of rich classmates, people from the northern oligarchs. You had really wealthy people there. So there was a certain level of timidity that came with being in that kind of environment. You just felt like fish out of water sometimes. Sometimes you're able to connect, but sometimes they're talking at levels that you cannot even relate. When we went for vacation, we did this, we did that. I remember in GS2, one gentleman, one of my classmates then, he brought this pair of glasses, shades. This was, fashion shades to school. At that time, Deji, our school fees was roughly around 4,000 naira. And this guy brought a pair of police brand shades, and the cost of the shades was over 35,000. So that thing would have paid my school fees for at least 3 years. And the
Throughout
guy
your
was just
stay in
wearing a
school,
casual.
6 years.
you know, I'm telling you. So you kind of so there was a certain level of timidity that came with coming from a humble background. You literally had to figure out how to uh, position and to project your voice. So in last Potech or Lagos State Polytechnic, I was on that journey of self-discovery, trying to explore who I was. Also, growing up in Kano and moving to the city of Lagos, it was like moving from some suburb, to New York, so to speak. You literally saw things, magnified to multiple proportions, the expressions, the interaction. So I was on that journey. So, and it wasn't long after I moved to Lagos that I entered Lagos Polytechnic. So my Yoruba was a mess. I I could speak Hausa, but I didn't understand my own local dialect. And in Lagos Polytechnic then there was a lot of conversation. So it was me trying to figure out myself and just trying to find my voice. And as I went on that journey, joined, and that's something I always like to talk about when I'm speaking to people. Volunteering has always been one very strong thing that has helped me to develop and grow capacity, boldness, dexterity. You grow comfortable, doing things that you weren't comfortable with. So moving from a timid person to becoming someone who will be considered to be confident, outspoken, well spoken, and all of that took me volunteering and daring very uncomfortable situations. In fact, let me just mention this. I remember one time where the very first time I was going to, you know, lead a song in front of a crowd of young people, teenagers as it were, in one youth camp that I attended. I started, in the rehearsals, I was blazing it, and I stood in front of a crowd of like 1,000 young people, and I totally lost my voice. I almost entered the ground, and that could have been the end of me trying, but I kept trying. And as I tried, spoke on bigger stages, volunteered for things that pulled me out of my comfort zone. I developed the capacity to be comfortable in many situations, and so OAU was yet another step on that journey. Obviously, when I entered OAU, it was, also a, I would say crescendo. I kept, moving up, and getting more visibility, getting more comfortable with leadership and all of that. Yeah.
I mean, it's been very clear that there's a pattern. I mean, since you went to OAU, you studied chemical engineering, and I'll come back to that in a bit. But you went on to lead one of the largest school
Campus
fellowships
fellowships.
on
Yeah. Yeah.
campus. Yeah, one of the largest campus fellowships. But that seems to be a pattern now. It looks like your life is trailed by coming from obscurity into a place of leadership. The same thing, you came into Covenant Christian Center, and then within a short span, you became the pastor of one of the largest branches. And it looks like it's a pattern that follows you. It would be good to explore What do you think makes that possible for in case someone is listening and is wondering, I need to come from a place of obscurity and I need to stand on, as it were, on solid ground. What carries you on that journey to make that possible?
This is a very humbling question, and I must say that every time I think about it, I am careful not to be make the presumption that this is something that I know how to recreate. But I will say some of the things that have perhaps enabled that to be possible, some enablers of that trajectory. And the first thing I'd like to say is the willingness to volunteer. I just talked about that a bit, but I want to expand on it a bit more. I think one thing with me, and it goes back to what I said about being passionate about life and being passionate about impact. It can sound cliche, but that's really who I am, to be honest. I couldn't think of a life or an existence where I was basically pursuing things that had me, just me at the center of it. It has to be a collective. It has to be something that enables us to carry other people along on that journey. So, you and I were in, school together, and I recall even from Lagos Polytechnic all the way to Obafemi Awolowo University, if I was ever in a project group or in any group engagement, and volunteers were needed, I will be one of the first to volunteer. Not the first, but one of the first. Once I see that people are not willing to put themselves forward, for me, it's an automatic thing. And the reason is because it's a collective. If nobody is stepping forward to assist to move things forward, then how do we move things forward, right? So I'm on a table, I'm in a group project, I'm anywhere, and I see people picking roles. I'm never the one to sit back and want to be docile. So I want to be able to contribute. And so that has influenced how that trajectory has played out in what you call it then, Lagos State Polytechnic. I ended up rising to the role of the assistant choir lead, and I worked with
Yes.
Ronke at the time. And it wasn't that
Yes.
I positioned and said, "Oh, hey, look, I want to be noticed." It was that I was willing to share what I'd known. Now, the precursor to volunteering, obviously, is that you need to hone your skills. And I'll say this for people who are listening. Look, the reality is that skills will always, fish you out within the crowd. Skills are very important, right? People sometimes miss opportunities to hone their skills. There are sort of latent, gifts that people have, talents that people have, but without honing it, what happens is that it's not of much use to a lot of people. I was speaking to a young man yesterday who came for some sort of mentorship and some career mentorship. And I said two things that I think could be useful to our listeners today. I said that there is what you call the functional competence and the technical competence. Functional competence is sort of generic. So if I say HR function, oh, I'm an HR practitioner, I spent 10 years in HR, that's functional competence. But if you spend 10 years in HR, I'll expect you to be able to sit down and crack and put together payroll. If you're going to be able to put together payroll and ensure that there's little or no errors, that's technical competence. It requires you to be able to know perhaps how to use the maybe software that is required, let's say SAP or even just Excel. Can you put together payroll and make sure that when you submit it for like 100 people, we're looking at it and there's no error? So that's different from functional competence. And I don't have to be a HR expert to be able to put together payroll. You understand? So it's important for people to hone their technical skills because technical skills will enable your functional, usability or functional flexibility. You understand? Your
Yeah.
utility from a function point of view would be enhanced by your technical competence. So people need, so how is that playing out? As let's say a former choir director, what have you, you build the capacity to score songs, to lead songs, to manage people, and that helps you to be able to fill in a role when you're being sought out. So there's that skills bit. So I've talked about volunteering, I've talked about skills. The last thing that I really think is also very critical for leadership progression, of course, is character. Um, what character does is that when you're not in the room and people are talking about you, the things that come up are things that are encouraging and promoting as opposed to diminishing and discouraging. So if you have a character and a reputation that allows people to talk about you in a pleasant way, you will get opportunities that you were not even involved in at all. And I'll give a very good, example and a testimony about how come about I was selected to be the campus pastor for the Lekki campus of the Covenant Nation. I wasn't in the room, had no idea what conversations were going on, but a picture of me had been posted, on social media, and it was posted, by the senior pastor of the Covenant Nation, Pastor Polytechnic. And one of my dear friends who were on campus together saw the picture and made a comment to Pastor Poju. He had a very close relationship with Pastor Poju and said, "Hey, look, do you know this person who has been hiding in your campus?" And of course, Pastor Poju, who didn't know anything about me at that time, said, "Oh, I don't know him." And then whatever he said, I had no idea. Till today, don't have the exact words of what that conversation was. But that was how, I was recommended, identified, and then what happened after, transpired. So some of these things, they're very important. Three things again: volunteering, honing your technical competence on your skills, and of course, building character and reputation such that when people speak about you when you're not there, they have pleasant things. Now, doubtless some people might have, some concerns about A or B, but like, one of my mentors and of course my senior pastor, Pastor Pedro says, you want to be in a situation where if you took 100 people, you have a lot more people, and overwhelmingly, more number of people saying something positive about you than the people saying something negative about you. And that's what we call goodwill. You need more
Yes.
goodwill than ill will as an individual.
Yeah. It reminds me about Amazon reviews. When you go to Amazon, you always get those people that will score the product one or two. But as long as you see that the majority are scoring fours and fives, it's okay, this product is good enough.
Deji,
So
you
yeah,
you
you're
literally
right.
picked that out of my mouth. You know what happened? Yesterday I was at a management meeting in the office, and we're talking
Mm,
about reviews. And I said to them that, in fact, if you go to a product on any of these platforms and you see only good reviews, then you have to be
there's a
wary
problem.
because it will likely be bots or some paid reviews. You
Yeah,
expect to see a
yeah,
few displeased individuals, but the goal is to look at the overwhelming number of reviews. So that's
yeah,
just so spot on.
yeah. I want to touch on that last point you talked about character, extremely
Yeah.
critical. So for you, if you are looking to people that will rise into the place of leadership, now that you are at the helm of that of leadership, what characters would you seek out for?
That's very important. Yeah. So, I mean, when we say character broadly, I mean, it's a compound word for multiple things. As people will say culture. I just had an interview before we jumped on this call. We are trying to hire someone in our human resource department. And the question she asked me was, what would I say is the culture of my organization? And, so it's a generic word, right? Character. So, what are the details of the types of characteristics, or the kind of behavioral patterns that you would see, and you would say this person is a good person for leadership. One of it, first of all, is respect. People underestimate the value of respect. Respect for people. Just being that kind of person who is respectful. And, in Africa, respect is almost some sort of like a given nuance. But the reality of respect is beyond your body posture, is beyond, bowing your head, is beyond, saying man, sir. It is more like something that comes from inside of you that the other person can tangibly feel that this person is offering honor and regard. That is not driven by just some superficial, behavior or patterns. Again, in this part of the world, if you see someone much older than you, you probably bow or, whatever it is, you understand. I mean, I'm a Yoruba boy. So from that lens, you have all of that. But that can be misconstrued as, the end all and be all of respect, right? If you embody respect, it doesn't translate only to people who are ahead of you. It doesn't translate to people who are well off, better, better off than you. It translates to everyone around you. How do you treat your driver? How do you treat your cook, your nanny? How do you treat the guys who are reporting to you in the corporate setting, right? So this is very important. People say that how you know people's true character is not how they treat people who can benefit them. It's how they treat people who cannot give them anything, apparently. Do you understand what I mean? So
Yeah.
respect is very important in leadership because you can't serve people. Because I mean, the hallmark of leadership is service, the ability to be able to galvanize people and create the most good from that effort of bringing people together. So if you don't have respect for people, I have no respect for you in terms of leadership, right? So that's one important thing. So beyond respect, I would also expect that a leader, right, in terms of character, is someone who is willing to communicate. One might consider, communication as just a skill, but communication itself is also, in some sense, a character you can embody. Meaning, when you have concerns, for instance, Deji, you might have concerns with some colleague of yours. Maybe something was done and you weren't exactly impressed. You know what some people will do? They'll be quiet about it. They will internalize that emotion and refuse to communicate. And that leaves room for no possibility of improvement. So you're not giving feedback. You're not a communicator. You're not expressive. You internalize things and you fence people. You create walls rather than build bridges, you understand? So I want to see someone who has that willingness to bring people in. You're willing to engage people. You're willing to sound stupid if you may. You're willing to be vulnerable. That's leadership. Leadership is messy. It's not all fancy and all of that. You have to be able to sit in a room and get people to tell you things that you're not comfortable with and you're able to take it. Obviously, in terms of character as well, one would put integrity up there. We can't even start talking about character without the word integrity. The I word is so key. And when we talk about integrity there, yeah, this gets tested a lot. I'm so glad that, I had the kind of background that I had. And I'll say that, from an influence point of view, one of the biggest influences of my, life and career has been my dad. My dad, in his career, he was a very hardcore mechanical engineer who ran a business after working at Caterpillar. The Caterpillar brand, the big Caterpillar brand traction equipment. He worked there for many years and then went on to run his business. One of the things that hallmarked his business was his integrity, the way in which he related with his clients. I was involved with that a bit as a teenager. I got involved a bit in my late 14, early 15, to 16 till I graduated from secondary school. And I saw how he related, how he was very transparent, how he basically ensured that whatever he was doing, he didn't want to take he didn't want to take advantage of people, take people's property, take things that weren't his own. And so that's kind of ingrained in me, that culture that look, you're not going to get ahead in life, being sort of crooked and fraudulent. Be transparent, have integrity. Because without that, a leader is going to end up using their office and their position to abuse the people that have been called around them or have, trusted them. So integrity will also rank high there. I mean, there are a lot of other things I could say, but I'll just, rehash what I've just said. It's very important to have much respect for people. It's important to be a great communicator, one who is willing to communicate and share, what's going on. I mean, you could talk about being visionary, but that's not, I would say, a character trait. It's more, just a leadership
Yeah.
quality. But integrity is definitely a character trait that is very important. Of course, we can talk about benevolence and throw it in there, but there are a lot of other things we can talk about.
Yeah, very, very important things you've mentioned. On the subject of communicating, I mean, Tayo, what I've seen also is that a lot of leaders want to communicate, but they also don't want to hurt the feelings of the people that they are talking to. What has
Mhm.
that been the experience for you in navigating that very gray area?
Yeah, so I mean, leadership is all shades of messy, all shades of emotion, but it's also one of the most rewarding privilege that any human being can have, the opportunity to lead other people. It's a privilege, it's a total privilege. I go back to the Bible, and you would see that when God was talking about man having dominion, He didn't say have dominion over your fellow men. He said, have dominion over the fish of the sea, the bird of the air, and over every living thing that creeps on the earth. So man was not designed to have dominion over man. That's not how God designed it. So leadership is service. And that's why in the teachings of Jesus, he taught about leadership being service to all, right? So when you have the opportunity to communicate, understand that it's a privilege for you to, first of all, be in the role and the capacity to lead. And it's a privilege for you to have known some of the things you know that the people you are following don't know. And so don't consider yourself, first of all, to be a better version of humanity. You come with humility to talk to people, right? Because of the importance of goal orientation and goal achievement in corporate settings, there's a certain version of leadership that is tough, that needs to push, that needs to generate some energy to get things going. So I'm not talking about leadership that is devoid of, you know, that tone of business where we need to get things done. So it's how I like to describe it is tough love. When I need to tell you the truth, I tell you the truth with humility, but I tell you the truth exactly as it is without mincing words. I tell you with an intention not to demean you, to hurt your feelings, but to give you perspective. So when I'm doing that, I am not attacking your person, I'm addressing your output. I'm addressing a behavior. I'm not addressing who you are as a person. So in my version and brand of leadership, I would not use words that demean you. I would not use insulting words, but we would address the issue that needs to be addressed and make it clear to you that, look, if you need to make adjustments here, please make it. I am opportune to work with a lot of young people in my journey. I mean, I've sat in this role, as an executive at Skilled Integrated Services over the last 12 years. In fact, my 12th anniversary was yesterday, by the way. Uh, and so I've had the privilege of, working with a lot of young people. And I can tell you that you have to be willing to pour out of yourself and really just engage with people to be able to, bring them to a place where they need to be. You have to be tough, but you also have to be passionate about seeing them grow. And so that will balance how you're able to communicate with them.
Interesting. Let's now fast forward a bit to your experience with Skilled. You joined in 2013, if I'm correct, right?
Correct.
You joined as a COO. When you joined, was it a big shift for you? And I'm saying that, I mean, in all humility, I, for example, came from the background of operations. I got thrown into an environment where we do finance, and eventually I became a partner. And at some point, I used to have imposter syndrome that am I supposed to be, doing what I'm doing? Am I supposed to be here? And for you, what was that shift like when you became the COO of Skilled?
That shift was major. I would say it was seismic, if you may. But it was also humbling in the sense that, first of all, I was referred, but again, I had to go through a series of interviews and, prove my, self as, a qualified candidate. So when I came in and I saw how far the company had gone, I was quite impressed, but I was also immediately inspired to, ask myself the big question, how can you contribute? What difference can you make here? I was being hired for the role of the chief operating officer, reporting only to the founder. And so that meant I was running the entire business, in partnership with the founder. And for a business that was already 13 years, you understand, you weren't coming with any, you know, what do you call it on your shoulder, chip on your shoulder to say, look, you knew you had to come humble because they had done 13 years already of, impacting thousands of customers and all of that. So I came in there wanting to immediately see, okay, what is the legacy that I'm currently standing on and how can I, enhance that legacy? So that gave me the perspective and the lens to begin to look for our gaps. Immediately I started looking for our gaps and spotted them. I took a view to saying, look, we're going to address this working directly with the CEO and seeing to which degree is she willing to make changes, right? One thing you must be very wary of if you're number two is that you, as they say, you can't be more Catholic than the Pope, so to speak. No matter how much you are able to see, no matter how much how immersed you are in a vision, you must be careful not to drive too hard. You must carefully lay your ideas and allow the passage of time for the owner of the business or the founder or the key person to warm up to your ideas. So there's a great deal of emotional intelligence that is deployed there. And a lot of people don't talk about it. Massive injection of emotional intelligence to know how to present your ideas in an acceptable way, to know how to pull back when you are pushing too hard. Things that I cannot even start to talk about. Maybe when I write a book one day, I would say, right? So the role came with a weight of assignment. The company was already doing over 150 million at the time. But immediately I settled in and I saw what they were doing, I felt, okay, we can do a lot more than this, but how much more can we do? So I set a target as soon as I settled in. And I said, I'd like to see this company hit 1 billion naira in 5 years. And that was just something that was at the back of my mind. I must have written it somewhere because, I was, always writing at the time and all that. And down the stretch somewhere, we started trying to, push. We gained momentum and things started, evolving. And Deji, without me going back to my vision board, exactly year five, we hit 1 billion naira. Exactly year five. It was ridiculous. Even I could not believe it because the year before we had done 650 million, and there was no indication that we would have had that leap to hit 1 billion naira. But somehow, because we had injected that thought in the atmosphere, I had pushed that, desire and aspiration. And it wasn't just an aspiration or some pipe dream. Every year we're setting targets that were reasonable compared to the performance last year, audacious enough and reasonable enough. We kept growing. So we moved from 150, for instance. The first year we had a dip because there was, some fault lines I had seen, and that happened. Then we moved from that to 250 million, moved from 250 million to 500 million as a company. We doubled in 1 year, and that was one of the most difficult years. That was 2016 when you had all that massive devaluation of the naira. That was Buhari's first year. It was ridiculous, but we scaled and we moved to 500 million. And then 2017 we moved to 650 million, and from 650 million we hit 1 billion in 5 years without feeling like I was struggling to do it. It was just for me that's testament to the power of vision.
Many people are watching this video also want to, a lot of people are building businesses, and what you said now will probably make a lot of people pause and ask themselves what clear steps can they take. So you said something, for example, like you identified certain gaps. How did you go about identifying those gaps? What actions would you say you brought in that was not existing before in the business that led to that journey? If you can just give us some practical tips.
All right, I like practical tips and I like people, taking off the hood and really looking at what exactly, because sometimes success
Yeah.
can be a bit passive. Oh, I did it, God did it, and things like that. But one of the things that we did early days was assessing, okay, this is the company right now. We have X number of divisions. This is our revenue. This is the number of functions we have. At the time when I joined, guess what? We didn't have an independent procurement department. Procurement was subsumed under admin, for instance, right? We didn't have a full-fledged IT department, but we had a data desk, someone who was sort of managing data and IT. We didn't have a well, trained sales team. We had a sales team, but it was just, a very, very small and budding sales team. We assessed all of these things. I did, and I said to myself, okay, if we're going to grow, first of all, Deji, let me put this to our listeners. You don't have perspective as to what you need to do to get somewhere if you have not told yourself where you are trying to get to. Do you know that too few people actually, you know, articulate their dreams? I thought I was wrong about this until the more I spoke with people and I asked them, oh, what exactly are you trying to do? If I ask those pointed questions, the less I heard clear articulation about what you're trying to do. What are you trying to achieve? Uh, Today is 3rd of December. My goal for next year, for instance, Deji, is to achieve 17.5 billion naira, which is over $10 million next year, but maybe let's say $12 million. That's my target for next year. This year, we closed with about 11 billion naira, thereabout. You understand? So if you ask me, I want to achieve 17 billion. What do I need to do today to achieve 17 billion? I know some things that I cannot proceed from this year into next year with. Because if I do, we will not achieve that. So part of the things we did early days was identify, okay, where do I want to get to? So I wanted, let's say I wanted to grow from 150 to 250 million. That gave me an indication of, okay, these things are the gaps to achieve that. Because a gap is not in isolation. It is in relation to something, right? In relation to. So if I am behind in class and I want to get a first class, I'm thinking, what do I need to do? What grades do I need to get between now and my final semester to get a first class, right? So that's exactly how it works. So you identify the gaps. So we identified gaps in internal control. We identified gaps at that time in procurement. I knew that as a company that was big on, sales, trading, retail distribution, we needed to have a solid procurement department that was doing their job. So we started putting that in place. We also identified culture gaps. So I put that in place. I'll tell you one thing I did that's very important that could help the listeners. I came into a culture that I, found very funny. I was coming in from consulting where we were very intense, very bullish, very aggressive about work. You could come in, back in the days in consulting on a regular work day, and you were told in the office that, hey, you're going to Abuja today. Go back home, pick a bag, and dash off. In fact, at a time, we had to keep a bag, a travel bag around in your car because you could be told you are going anywhere at any time. It doesn't have to be Abuja. It can be you're going to what you call it now, Enugu, and you're going that evening. They've booked your flight without your permission. You understand what I mean? So that culture of work, I came into, skills at the time, and people would close at 4 o'clock because they went to catch a train, and their offer letter says 5 o'clock. So I was like, what? It seemed like a ministry, I mean, forgive my shooting darts at it, but it seemed like, some civil service work. And I found that very strange. So I didn't push anybody, but what I started to do was I will be at work. I'll keep grinding when people leave. And when they leave, week one, week two, after a while, when I give them work and I tell them you need to deliver this today, they understand I need to stay back a bit to deliver it. And then the culture gradually became that of pushing ourselves. Nothing significant was ever built casually. You understand? So that culture needed to shift. So those are the gaps we identified. We identified culture gaps. I personally reviewed our then HR manual and I built the first robust HR manual that we were using when I joined. And it wasn't because I was a HR expert. I consulted with colleagues because it was a small firm. We didn't have all the different roles and expertise in place. And that's one of the beauties of growing a business. You've also worked in growing firms. You've seen that, you know, demand to be multiple things, to wear multiple hats. And so that was the culture I ingrained. Today, when I'm trying to hire, I'm looking for people who are entrepreneurially minded. I don't want people who think my job is to move this box from A to B. Anything outside that, don't call me. I want people who are thinking, how do I solve problems? How do we collectively deal with things? So we built that understanding and we kept growing, putting processes in place, putting structures in place, introducing departments that we focused on hiring. We hired a lot of the people that I met when I joined the firm within 3 years had left the firm. And it wasn't because I pushed anybody out. The culture we're building was too tough for some people to work with. So they wanted out, and I was okay with it. But as we got the opportunity to replace, we replaced with people that had certain types of culture. And I can tell you that some of the best things that happened to SKLD, in my 12 years, has been getting solid people who have literally imbibe the vision in the way I imbibe it. And I've carried that vision and pushed limits. We had a head of sales who joined about 3 years or 2 years after I joined and really understood the assignment, scaled the business, with that same passion that I had. We had a head of retail who also joined the business down the stretch and has carried on the spirit of the business in a way that ownership was 100%. I mean, these two people I mentioned right now have left the firm, but I can tell you that our relationship is still so solid because we had the same mentality about work. So those are some of the things that helped.
Yeah. And at some point, I think you also went through backwards integration and you tried to
Yep.
start producing manufacturing garments. What inspired that idea, and did you face challenges in implementing it? How has it worked out?
Thank you. So you recall I mentioned that in 2016, we had a double growth in revenue. We moved from 250 million to 500 million in a single calendar year. That was the same
Yeah.
year where we were backward integrated. And I'll tell you what happened. So when we saw what was happening in the macroeconomic space, what was happening to, the Naira, what was happening with respect to even access to FX, to be able to pay. It wasn't just the value that was plummeting. It was also the fact that you couldn't even access dollars to pay your vendors. We saw the inflation and all the other things that were going on in the economy. We took a view that if we continue to depend solely on imports, we will be holding the shorter end of the stick by the end of the day because we saw that people could even barely access FX to pay foreign vendors. So what we decided to do was, hey, we have an opportunity, a window, which is localize our production, push very hard and see if we could substitute some of the imports with local options. So we took a view. At that time, we had not even accessed the BOI fund, but 2016, we set up a small factory. I had the background in garment production from my university days into youth
I
service,
think I
so I knew
remember. I remember that.
I knew a thing or two about garment production. I
Yeah.
wasn't an expert as people might think, but I
Mm.
was, I was exposed enough to understand how to learn. I think, and I say this a lot to a lot of young people. One of the things that school did for us, whether you studied engineering or philosophy or whatever it is to really frame and contextualize how to learn. Most people don't understand that what a university degree does for you is that it frames your understanding of how to do research and how to learn. So for me today, it doesn't matter what field. If you went through a university and you got a degree, you should be able to pick any particular subject or, and start to unravel it, figure out the materials you need, and then put it together. I mean, you did your project, you did a lot of things.
Mhm.
You did new courses every semester and you had to start from scratch, connect the dots. So those are the things. So for me, what we did was we looked at the garment production space with my basic skills. I then started to pick materials, look at what we needed to do, got a lot of support, consulted with suppliers who had set up multiple factories. That was also one very interesting thing. You would have thought about suppliers only as people that you're going to give money to give you, but suppliers have expertise because they have supplied people, these things. So they came in, they looked at it, said, oh, you need this, you don't need that, you need this, blah, blah, blah. And we're able to put together roughly, at that time, it was a 12 to 20 machine factory. We had about roughly 20 staff, and we started to produce. And guess what, Deji? In that year alone, we're able to import substitute to the degree of 30%.
Wow.
30% of our turnover that year came from locally produced garments, and that really, really helped. But we didn't stop there. We've scaled since then. That's roughly 20 machine factory has grown to over about 100 machine factory now. In 2019, we got a BOI loan in partnership with one of the commercial banks in Nigeria, and we expanded the factory, set up a new space. Today, we're able to churn out 6,000 garments monthly, and we have about 100 employees there. Mostly ladies, mostly female. Of course, for a good reason, as well. So something that we're super proud of, and something that we'll also hope to scale from where we are right now. Our vision is to scale that to be able to do export. So our goal is not just to import substitute, but to also start to consider the export market where we're able to sell, some of our products to the West, to clients, whether it's in America or Europe. So those are some of the things we're looking to do. So yeah, that's how we did that.
Brilliant. Brilliant. Very recently, you were promoted to become the CEO of Skilled.
Yeah.
What are you looking forward to? What should we expect from Skilled over the next few years?
Yeah, that's an exciting question for me, obviously, because I mean, so first of all, I see the transition as um, a a validation of the principle of diligence. Again, going back to the Bible, which I like to refer to a lot, um, it talks about if you're diligent in something little, more will be given. If you're diligent with another man's, you also be handed. Now, to contextualize that, I joined as an employee in 2013, didn't have any aspirations for ownership and all of that, to be honest. I just wanted to work. It was an opportunity to get out of, you know, entrepreneurship on my own terms, which I was running a business at that time, into, I mean, funny story. My wife, had looked at what I was doing. I said, look, you're doing so, you know, uh, you're putting in so much work. If only you could do what you're doing at a higher scale, this would be significant. And I felt a bit insulted by that initially. I was like, look, I can run my business myself. But I listened because I knew that she wasn't saying this, out of slight and stuff like that. So I listened. I said, okay, well, I'm open. I mean, if something comes that I really think aligns, I will take it. And when SKLD came, Deji, I cannot tell you how square peg, square hole it felt. Everything that I'd done, I used to sell stationery when we were in Ife together, Deji. I sold stationery when we were doing technical drawing. So I was selling technical drawing to fellow classmates. I ran a hostel accommodation when I was in Ife. I ran a driving school when I was in Ife, right? I went into garment production and fashion when I was going for my youth service. When I came into SKLD, it felt like every skill, everything that I tried. In fact, I sold gadgets as well and did a couple of other things in my days in consulting. I consulted for someone who was a gadget distributor. When I came into SKLD and sat in that role and I started to see what was required, I realized that everything was sort of like it was a coming together of everything. And so fast forward 12 years, becoming the CEO, I would say over the last 12 years, I have maintained a certain degree of ownership that this feels like a continuum rather than something new. Of course, the title is different, but it feels like a continuum, so to speak, of that same passion, right? So what do I, think we will be looking at? What do I see in the future of SKLD? First of all, one of the things I see is, improving our fundamentals as a business. We've done extremely well top line. Like I mentioned to you, we did just about 11 billion naira last year, coming from 150 million uh, 12 years ago. So we're talking almost 80x thereabout, right? But I want us to improve our fundamentals right now in terms of improving profitability and bottom line, right? Just being generally a healthier business overall, right? So that's one of the things that I'm gunning for. The other thing is we're looking at expansion. Expansion for me has always been in the works. We tried, to explore expansion as early as 2021. We set up a business in the UAE, and today that business is already doing some numbers, but we want to fully expand that, right? We're also looking at Africa in general. We're looking at Francophone and Anglophone Africa. So we're looking at countries like Senegal, Ivory Coast, Ghana, and Kenya for expansion. I mean, you might not know this, but we have five major divisions under our business. And one of those divisions, for instance, is the humanitarian division, where we work with international humanitarian organizations, over 40 of them, and we supply their products across the region. You understand? So it gives us an opportunity to be able to transition into some of these regional markets where maybe there's conflict or perhaps there's just prepositioning of stock for some of these projects. Also, we're looking at our retail business being ripe enough for international expression. So we're looking at Ghana for retail, for instance, because we see some similarities in terms of the culture, the market environment. So we're looking at that. Senegal, we're looking at the humanitarian business because it's a hub for a lot of the humanitarian organizations. Same thing with Kenya. Dubai, we're looking at it as a distribution hub for moving goods into Africa. We find that logistics across Africa is a lot more difficult than it is inbound from and other continents like China and the Middle East. So we're looking to set up a distribution hub in the Middle East that can service our African clients. So these are some of the things we're looking at. And of course, we're going to be deepening, things around culture. We're looking at also diversifying our revenue. Obviously, if we're looking at international markets, we're looking at, you know, a revenue profile that is not just Naira based. So we have, foreign income across different markets. So those are some of the things we're looking at. Then we're also going to deepen our manufacturing. I'd mentioned earlier that we're looking to scale our garment manufacturing. That's something very important to us. When we scale that, we hope to be able to create a lot more jobs and export locally produced garments from here. Then there's another very major project that is on the horizon. We're looking to move into nutrition, and this is inspired by some of the work we do in the humanitarian space. We find out that nutrition is a critical part of the humanitarian intervention because when children ages 0 to 5 don't even have access to nutrition, there's no opportunity to even help them in the future because if they don't survive that first 5 years, what is the point of any humanitarian intervention, right? So we see that a lot of the humanitarian organizations are grappling with providing nutrition in a lot of these conflict, laden communities or disaster prone communities, right? So we're looking at nutrition. We have a partner in India that we're already collaborating with. So we're looking to set up roughly $10 million factory somewhere in the northern part of Nigeria in the next maybe 18 to 24 months at the most, with a view to providing nutritional supplements for children in the Sahel region. So those are some of the very interesting projects on our horizon. On the private equity and fundraising side, we're looking to, just in case an investor is listening to me today, we're looking to exit our current, private equity investors somewhere down the stretch. There's already those conversations. They've spent 5 years with us and they've been very happy with our growth. But we're also looking to raise growth capital for the next phase of expansion. So there are a lot of interesting things in the horizon. I'm excited about what the future holds.
I mean, two things. One is I see the reason why the name changed from school kid to skilled because you've really gone beyond just school kids. It's a
Absolutely.
lot more, yeah, that you're doing now. And we should definitely bookmark a year's time because I really want to hear in a year's time, what this grows because it sounds quite exciting. I definitely want yeah, at least let people hear what the journey has been like for you.
Yeah.
You're wearing so many hats because I want to start tapering this now. You're wearing so many hats, and there are some we have not even talked about, like you being a founder of Harder Business School. We've talked about your leadership in the Covenant Christian Center, what you're doing. I mean, what you've already described, they're going to be doing now as the new CEO of Skill. I can't imagine the immense workload. I'm sure you have people and all that, but still, you're at the steering wheel. The question on my mind is how do you pull all this together? And then I'm now adding another element and another dynamic into that picture, your family. You also seem to have a very, very loving relationship, with your wife and children. How do you balance everything together? Does Agnes shout on you sometimes that please stay at home? How do you do it?
As they say, something has to give.
Yeah.
Something has to give, as they say. So, I mean, in all fairness, I think the balancing act is one that always excites me. I think human beings underestimate the capacity they hold to be many things. And I usually say this, you're more than one thing. When the creator was putting us together, a good testament to my point that reinforces my points, as both of us are sitting here, our bodies are doing multiple things. There are multiple processes happening within our bodies right now. There's digestion happening, there's breathing
True.
happening, there's all kinds of things happening that you're not even necessarily aware of. And the reason why it's happening is because they have been set up in a way that they can run independently. But in some sense, you are part of it. You are quote unquote superintendent over it because it's within you, right? So I feel like human beings are vastly more capable. They're vastly, they're vastly full of more potential than they explore. The concept of, oh, focus on one thing is great. But the problem is what people don't understand is when you focus on one thing and you achieve mastery, it gives you what you call the room and the invitation to go into other things. And a story I like to talk about a lot is our most notable entrepreneur in Africa, Mr. Dangote. He started off with trading. He started off with trading food commodities. But what audacity to go into all the other things he has gone into today and look at how well he's doing them. He could have started with trading. There are contemporaries that he has that are still doing trading till today, and that's all that they did. Do you understand? So for me,
Mm.
I ask people, why do you think it's just one thing? Yes, it's great, to be known by one thing, and all of that. But the reality is that we're not all wired the same. You understand? So for me, I believe strongly in exploring everything that I'm potentially capable of and finding ways to do them well. So the balance is this, right? You have multiple things that you need to pay attention to. Family stands up there as one very important thing. Family is that, so to speak, harness, that foundation that helps you to perform and to do every other thing. So you need to find a way to ensure that you give family quality time. And quality time is not in the length of time, but it's in the depth of the interaction and the engagement. So I am one dad, for instance, that I'm excited about any opportunity to be with my kids or to, So if my wife says, "Oh, I want to, do something, I want to leave the kids with you," I'm excited about that. It's never, a burden, but I want to be able to build memories, with that. And then, of course, pay attention to the different, milestones and see how you can, contribute to that, right? So beyond that, also, quality time with my wife is really about organizing stuff. So, for instance, I'll give an example. When we look at, our schedules and all that, we decide, okay, we want to have a specific time of the month, right? Where we go on date night and stuff like that. Those things can be mentally as you can have a mental assent that I need to do this, but if you don't have it on your schedule, it's not going to happen. This morning when I was leaving home, was it? Yeah, it was this morning or yesterday. I asked, "Hey, what's up with your weekend? What's happening this weekend? Oh, let's go do stuff." So that creates an item on my schedule that gets as much priority as this interview, for instance, or as meeting with a client or meeting with a supplier or meeting with our bankers. You understand? So it's about scheduling. What about leading within the faith circle as a pastor? You have schedules as well. You schedule your times where you of course minister. I schedule the Thursdays where I minister. I schedule the days where I'm doing anything, right? I also schedule interaction with people, counseling. So if you reach out to me and say, "Oh, you want to see me," I tell you, "Oh, meet me at this time window. This is the time that I have scheduled for that."
I see.
Except if it's urgent, we're not going to just do it randomly. So that helps me to block the time for that. You understand? And then, of course, with work, it's 100%. As much as family is 100%, work is 100%. And the reason is that people think, "Oh, I have to, I have 100%, I have to give 20%." No, you can be 100 on five things. And how I mean is that it's really about how much we're able to impact that entity or that establishment or that project per time. And what makes that possible is the intensity of thought and the intentionality of effort and output. I don't need to work um, 80 hours a week with the same level of intensity to get the output that I need. I might be out and around work 80 hours a week, but the intense periods don't have to be all the time. There are moments where I sit back in the office, everybody has left the office. Office is about maybe empty around 6:30, for instance, and I'm in the office till 9 p.m. because I want to clear some very important things. So I try to identify what my mentor and pastor will call commanding height. What's the commanding height of that particular role? So as the CEO of SKLD, the commanding height is to ensure that the vision is cast, right? The direction is set, that we go out and hire the best talent. That's another thing that a lot of people need to understand. As the leader, you must make sure that you're building the best team. Um, Stakeholder management is also a very important part of the commanding heights. Then working on the people. I'm not as involved in the nitty-gritty of running the organization, but I'm very involved in the people doing that. So if they need any assistance, they know that they can reach me. I tell them this. I said, it is never your problem alone, it's ours to solve together. So if you reach
mm,
your wit's end and you can't resolve it, bring it to me. Consider me as your chief problem solver. I say that to them, as I'm your chief problem solver. So if you have a problem you cannot solve, know that you have help in me. We're going to make a few calls and we'll figure it out. So we always do that. So it's a practice that I push out there.
mm,
So balance is important, and balance is not, you know, punishing one aspect of your life because the other. First of all, you need a proper scheduling system. If you go to my room, you will find daily planner, blocks of times. I don't follow it religiously, but it gives me what you call a guide. I've had my daily planners since 2019. I have daily planners for every year. So it coordinates Monday to Sunday. I have things I should do. Now, if I don't follow it religiously, if I need to remember what I need to be doing right now, I can quickly connect. And then I have reminders on my phone that tells me, okay, this is the time to call your kids. This is the time to do that. Even reach out to clients. At the beginning of every month, I reach out to clients without fail. Weekends, I also call. There's a time in my weekend that what I want to do is to call my clients who are my friends to build a relationship that transcends transaction. Hey, buddy, how you doing? What's happening this week? What's happening? Your wife, your kids, we talk, we gist. I may not call more than three clients in a weekend because there's not enough time. Maybe I call one client and spend 30 minutes on the phone. But guess what happens? Beyond the transaction, that person knows that this guy is my friend. He's looking out for me. He's referring people to me without me trying. That's that is how. So it's about really being passionate about what you're doing. If you're passionate about life, I'm passionate about the people that I serve in church. I'm passionate about the guys we built Hardy Business School for. We're passionate about Africa and human capital development, and that's why we built Hardy Business School. I'm passionate about skill because I mean it's given me so much, and I've also been able to impact the business in a significant way. Of course, I'm very passionate about my family, passionate about my wife and my kids, and every other thing that I do. So it's really about that. And I mean, today maybe you don't even know there's a third company called Value Tag. We started that company in 2013 or 2014 was when I reached the company. As at 2024 was when I really then kicked off something. And we started it just with an idea. I wanted to connect African businesses to global supply chains, especially in China, India, Russia, and Brazil, right? BRIC. And for me, I've seen how significantly my exposure to China and India has scaled my business in terms of knowing how to do big volumes and distribute and all of that. And I felt a lot of African businesses have great ideas, but we when we keep looking at only the infrastructure within Africa, we can't scale. Apple is an innovation company. They're not a production company, but their products are in every part of the world. There's so many African innovations that would not see the light of day because we don't have the scale within the continent to mass produce and to do stuff. So we have gotten so familiar with this whole, let me make it authentic. It was handcrafted. Handcrafted is great, but you will not become a unicorn with handcrafted easily. Do you understand? You understand what I mean? So we started thinking, how do we connect African businesses to places where they can scale? For instance, you're in agro, food processing, fantastic, but if you don't develop a scale to be able to meet the demand, for instance, of a Walmart, you would never be in that space. You will
yeah,
never be able to, you will never be able to sell at that scale. You're doing maybe dried food or seasoning, but you're only able to churn, let's say, X metric tons in it because of the capacity issue. So part of what we're doing is connect them with global supply chains, not just from an import perspective, but also technical partnerships, import machinery, right? Collaborate with people who have done this at scale and build local capacity, local technology transfer. Do you get? So that's what we started doing. And guess what? In April last year, this year rather, we took about roughly 10 people to China, including our team. About 11 of us went to China, all different businesses. We went for the Canton Fair, we exposed them to different manufacturers. By the time we moved to October, the Canton Fair in October, we were 30 on that trip, 30 of us. And it was mind blowing, the experience, the cultural integration, the introductions, the market surveys, factory visits, just mind blowing. People were really excited. The feedback has been overwhelming, and then the name of the company is called Value Tag. So that's a third company. And I'm not doing that in a way that will distract what I'm doing right now. There's a team running that, and I only give support, so to speak, as a member of the sort of management team, but not as a front-facing member. So I think that human beings can be more than one thing, and the capacity to explore your deepest, the deepest expression of your dynamism, or how broadly gifted you are, is such an important thing. Don't quieten or kill one aspect of you just because you think that, oh, you want to laser focus on one thing and everything else you wait. I don't believe that that's how life should be lived. Push, make sure you gain some stability in one thing, then start to mine other ideas and opportunities as you are building here. You will never get to a point where you feel like, oh, I'm finally there, so I can now try other things. You might be too old by the time you get to that point.
Thank you so much, Tayo. This has really been an amazing, amazing learning journey and opportunity, even for me. I've taken, lots of notes on things I can take back to reapply. Um, if you will leave a word with entrepreneurs, or as you are an entrepreneur, right? You're within an organization, but you are building. So, if you will leave words with people like that who want to build, who want to rise to the pinnacle of their career, who want to build businesses, what would that word be?
I would say make the center of everything that you're thinking about, let it be problem solving. How do you solve problems? Sometimes the hidden secret is an open secret. It's right there in front of us. What a lot of entrepreneurs do is that they have a vision of how much money they want to make. You understand? Or even entrepreneurs, a vision of how much money you want to make. I want to be rich. So that's a motivation. And that makes the journey longer. But if your highest ideal, your most significant driver is, I want to solve real problems that people are going through. I want to address problems and I want to alleviate people of these problems. You will scale a lot faster. You move further. You would invest a lot more in yourself. You will study harder. There will just be a lot more, and your trajectory will be way stronger in terms of your rise than someone who had it the other way around. So for me, that's what has gotten us here. And that's what I'd say to every entrepreneur. If you're building, build to solve real problems. Don't build because somebody else built at the other side of the street and they're making a lot of money. Where you hear, oh, that guy built this and he's made so much money. Then you go into building mode. Or this guy's career is doing so much because he's in this industry that you go into that. No. Is there a real problem for me to solve there? If you make that the priority, trust me, you know, I tell my people the scale of the problem you solve determines the scale of the reward you get. So solve the problem and scale that problem, meaning scale the solution rather, and you will find the rewards pouring in is guaranteed. Guaranteed.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Tayo, T Joy, Pastor T, several several names of packed in one.
Several
Really
coinages.
appreciate your time here with us on the Diary of an African Entrepreneur. Looking forward to having you again soon. Like I said, I'm bookmarking you already for some time down the line. All right. I think that brings us to the end of this episode.